Hello. If I look um, depressed or sad, it's not that. I'm just tired. These storms have been kind of crazy. The geostorms, I mean. We don't get rain here, not really. At least not this time of year. So I have been thinking about this for some time, and I think it would be interesting to post a video on it. I just got done watching a video about somebody being completely disillusioned with we call it the dunya in Islam, okay, which is the material world, okay? And there weren't some stuff I wasn't quite on board with, but for the most part, like I totally was like resonating with the heart of what he was saying. The fact that, men do really awful things. When I say men, I mean women too. I mean it as the like collective old word term men, okay? Like Lord of the Rings, whatever. The things we do for things that aren't even real, but are only real because we all have collectively decided on an abstract that has a physical value. It's just interesting. And I had this thought much earlier too, as well. Um, there's this person I've watched a few times, Shahid Bolsan. You should watch his stuff. It's very eye-opening. I really recommend it. But he was basically explaining like politics, and how corrupt and ultimately it's really just about the bottom line when it comes to politics. The reason we have so much suffering and war in the world is not because we don't have the capacity to not have those, to have a peaceful world. It's because there are just some people at the top that have literally found a way to monetize human life. So he says things like literally the powers that should not be. He doesn't say that verbatim, but I'm just talking about like Western superpowers, okay? How they seem to own much of Africa's resources, for example, even though it's not their country. And how they have this whole grifter thing going on where they will give loans to countries, but they don't expect those loans to be paid back because what it actually secretly is, it's meant to be unpayable. What it really is a one-time purchase where they just own your country now. And then that got me thinking on a more micro scale or macro. Like it really, I guess that depends on your perspective in that way. And I'm like, it's not really different when it comes to individual people, when it comes to banks and loans from banks, especially in the US, especially student loan debt. I don't know very many people my age who are not still struggling with student loan debt. There are people much older than me who have stable jobs, doctors, so on, chemists, whatever, still paying off student loans because student loans are manufactured and engineered in a way where you're not meant to pay them back or not meant to be able to pay them back to the point where it follows you after death. Yes. For those of you who are not living in the US, your debt does not die with you. It's really dystopian. Now it's up to the person if they want to like ascribe to that and be like, okay, I'm going to listen and actually pay it. A lot of us don't, not purely to be belligerent, but because we simply can't do it. Um, but it's kind of the same way with student loans, and it's of all the loans that exist in the U.S., like the corruption of real estate and mortgages and stuff, the ones that really cripple the US's future more than like any other one is by far student loans, by far. Because you're caught in this loop where you're told you can't get a stable job or income source and you can't have a stable, comfortable life where you can just reliably believe you're going to have shelter and food. Um, that you have to make sure you pursue an education, and then you pursue that education, but the irony is in pursuing that education, you've like chained yourself to a system where you're in constant enslavement to pay it off again, to the point where even people with like legit degrees, I hate the word legitimate because like there's, in my experience, it doesn't seem to matter how like legitimate like a major is. It just seems like the economy is screwed anyway. But like even people who will spend like 8 years like pursuing bioengineering, or just even a more common job, even though there's not enough doctors per capita in the US. Surprisingly, there's not enough doctors in the US per 100 people or something crazy like that, because we don't make allowances for people to be able to pursue those degrees unless they already come from like a rich trust fund family or something, which is my theory as to why they're not very, they tend to not be very empathetic sometimes. Not all, I can't speak for everybody, okay, but um and I don't want to disparage nurses either. There's definitely some bad ones out there, but nurses definitely work so much harder than like your average doctor. And I think in their case, it's because they're also being like worked to the bone for everything they have. And it's resulting in this crab bucket phenomenon where you're perceiving that the people you're helping are your enemy and actually the reason you're suffering so much. When it's really just all a ploy to get you to not focus on the chef that put you in there in the first place, to compete for the privilege of escaping the boiling water where you're just eaten alive. But yeah, no, basically, it really kind of comes down to the fact that, at least, and I'm speaking for a country I am from, okay? The American government does not believe in the sanctity of the human spirit. They claim, especially these fanatical evangelicals, how much they love God and Jesus and stuff. But I'm like, no, you worship the bottom line, or you wouldn't be supporting these entities like banks and stuff. I wouldn't go as far as to say money is always exclusively the root of all evil. I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, but what we have made it become and represent, and what we have used it like scapegoated money as to like justify the most horrific things imaginable in this life. We have made it a source of evil because we do crazy things for it, and it's not even the only reason it has any value is we've all collectively agreed it had value. Like I can literally pick up a sponge and like put like a Sharpie marker signing it something, I don't know. And if everybody on the planet agreed that it had enough value to buy a house, then it fucking would. So, but the thing is about money is that it's even more abstract than a tangible sponge. Which is funny because like you could say, well, cash is tangible, but like even cash isn't really that tangible because it's just a representation of what are supposed to be physical resources. There is more money, quote unquote, circulating in the economy than there are resources on Earth. And I will tell you why. Like that's not normal. It's not normal to have like trillions of dollars, like $35 trillion in debt. Yikes. Like there are trillionaires. It is not normal to be that wealthy. Like there is a certain level of wealth where you already can have anything, the most expensive of anything you want for the rest of your life till the day you die and still have so much money. Like you don't need more than that after a certain point. So why are there people on this earth that are billionaires and like a handful of trillionaires? Like and I'll tell you why. It's because we've monetized labor. We have monetized the human spirit. We have sold our own people into slavery. Like, and I need to be careful about the words "our own people." We are all one people, okay? And I think it's like the frog in the boiling water. Like they're gonna jump out, but like if you just slowly turn up the heat each time, you can start to become inoculated by the fact that you're being eaten alive and you're willing to make more allowances the next time. It's like maybe at first you're not comfortable with the idea of your quote unquote fellow American being a slave, but you're okay if having cheaper goods at Walmart if it means terrorists in another country are, have to be slaves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it starts smaller. If they can convince you to dehumanize other people in other places, then it becomes slightly easier. The more over time you're comfortable with that idea you get, then the next time it's presented to you, oh yeah, this person is American, but they're poor, ergo they are lazy. So they have earned the right to struggle in this way that is almost like on an animal basis. And you're like, yeah, you're right. That makes sense. You know what I mean? So you slowly turn up the heat. You slowly turn up the heat until you're completely robbed of all of your humanity. And you don't even notice that you yourself have become enslaved by the people you were told were there to protect you. Were there specifically to protect your interests. They're not protecting your interests. They're protecting their interests. And their interest is to keep you in bondage. Okay? And that's essentially student loans in a nutshell. You are owned by the banks. You are owned by the banks so that you can continue to work your ass off for the rest of your life in jobs you hate doing so that you can feed the fucking machine, so that people can keep having on-demand McDonald's, so that not because people really enjoy eating McDonald's, but because it's fulfilling a niche in which they are so exhausted and tired and unable to afford good nutritional food and have a decent support system that their government is actually supposed to provide for them, that it makes these viable options, these flat patties that aren't even really meat. They're just like broken bones and cartilage that normally wouldn't be sold in a butcher's, but that are just blended into hell and then drenched in ammonia to like avoid food poisoning. And then you eat it and then you think you like it because it's a quick carb to help you combat your own spiritual soul exhaustion from being worked like a fucking dog for apparently little yield, paycheck to paycheck, even not even that. Because you have that hit of salt and sugar that's just like instantly gets into your bloodstream, so you don't even have to wait for it. But like then you crash immediately because it's like throwing cotton in a furnace. It's not like wood. It's not going to burn that long. And then suddenly you're really irritated and angry, and you can't figure out why the person at the McDonald's window can't just get just get their shit together and get your order right. You know what I'm saying? It's so auto cannibalizing, and they want you to do that. They want you to eat each other because they don't want you to pay attention to the fact there are very real forces out there who have literally sold both of your souls to the banks. You know why? Because they don't worship God. They don't worship the sanctity of the human soul, which is just a piece of God. It is, okay? It's holy. That's why they say your body's a temple, okay? The miracle of life that's in you that can be expressed in all these different ways is so unfathomably beautiful. And you're taught to disrespect it and to devalue it every day. Not just to abuse it, but to trick you into thinking you should hate your body. You should this, you should that, you know? You should hate what you see. You should, you should be insanely critical. Like, listen, I'm all for accountability, but like when it comes to being critical of yourself because you challenge the person's worldview next to you, and let me be clear, this is not like a justification for like, oh, people are so woke, we should be able to have edgy humor. That I'm not talking about that. Okay, that is a completely different subject, and I frankly don't appreciate it when people conflate those two things because they are not actually the same. They're not. I don't care what you say. You don't have to like that, but it's true. Again, see, because I challenged your worldview, you don't like it. But when people challenge the comfort of the bubble that people are in, that's when it incites anger towards you. That's why you can wear a mask and mind your own business and people will be glaring at you for it because they're internalizing that you're saying something about them, which, I'm sorry, that's your cross to bear. Like, I'm, so to speak. That's not on me. Like, why am I? You're like, oh, you're just upholding an agenda. I'm like, no, I am taking initiative to not believe the people to tell me to just shut up and just go to work so I can keep the GOP, the mighty GOP alive, which doesn't even seem to be helping me, by the way, because it doesn't seem that no matter how many sacrifices I give to this fucking like ever hungry, ever starving economy, it never seems to get well. It never seems to get stronger or better. And it's so funny because there was some funny tweet thing. I don't know if it was like Tumblr or what. It was like a post where someone was like, if I was president, I would make rent $100 a month for everybody so that it'd be affordable, which is, like whatever. It's obviously would need to be more complex. But then somebody was like, "Well, I can't. I'm sure that's going to be a problem for the economy or something." And and all I could think of was like, "Boy, I'm so glad we continue to have unaffordable rent just so we can have economic collapse anyway." So if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know. But anyway, you'd be surprised how many elements of our lives are just complete lies so that we can uphold a delusion for rich people as well. Not only are they getting off on you feeding into an illusion that's enriching them, but it's specifically there so that they can enjoy their own holographic reality. Okay? It's so that they can continue to enjoy the delusion that they are invulnerable and they don't have to ever experience discomfort and never have to change anything about themselves and never have to acknowledge that at some point they're going to have to be forced to feel the empathy for all the people they've hurt in their lives. It's so that you can help them feel comfortable with their own ideas of not like, because if they really had to think about being more mindful with the way they live, it would be paralyzing to them. So in order to like live in their cloud castles, because it's just made of clouds, it's like in the Quran, they say like the spider's house is fragile. It's beautiful and intricate. It takes time. You can blow on it and that's the thing. These castles, they're made of clouds. They're not there forever. They're an idea. These empires are just an abstract idea that don't exist on a physical. They exist in a physical way in that it like sucks the life and resources from the earth, including like the people around them. Like, and people are like, oh, why should we care about the environment? I'm like, because it's all related, because you're an extension of the environment. Like, I can't force you to care about like birds and waterways. But at the very least, on a fundamental level, you should acknowledge that you are part of this world and that you will be a part of the lump sum that goes out. Okay? Like, it's going to affect you if there's suddenly a completely poisoned ocean that you can't fish from anymore. It's going to affect you if there's suddenly no clean water to drink because you're in an enclosed system. I mean, it goes so much deeper than that, but like you just think about like fossil fuels. Again, you don't have to care or believe in greenhouse gases, but just think of the humanitarian cost the fuel industry has. How many wars we perpetuate and countries we keep from developing so that we can continue to rob them of oil. Even in your own backyard, like Flint, Michigan has never gotten better. Like the North Dakota pipeline. Like there are people who are actively poisoned that's not even reported in the news for years. Factories actively poison because they can get away with it. These people that depend on these like resources, and it comes out of their tap, and it gives them cancer and stuff, and like they can get away with it because it's just easier to dispose it down a river than it is to actually like, and it's not that they can't afford it, they just don't want to have to pay people for their work, and so it's just easier to just poison the world. So just, I can't ask people to care about the environment or to put any stock in greenhouse gases, but at the very least, you need to understand on a fundamental level, there is a severe humanitarian cost that comes with this dependency on enriching oil companies. This is not there for you. It is there to help uphold these cloud castles so that people can feel like they're kings. Okay? I hate to tell you, but in the spirit, nobody is inherently superior to anyone else outside of the strength of your own character. Nobody is more elevated than anyone else. But these people want to live in a delusion where people are less than others. So what do? They have to fabricate their own thrones. They have to make chairs. But there's no chairs in the spirit, like in that way. I mean, there's no thrones like that exist that way. So you have to create an artificial throne. You have to create one that's completely abstract. You have to create one that's made out of the bodies of people. There's no ladder to climb. So how do you get over other people? Well, one of two things. Usually you're going to do both. You're going to dig a pit so that person is, or below you. You're going to dig a pit for that person so that you can feel above them. And you're going to keep hurting the people around you until you can keep standing up on their own bodies, until you can create an artificial feeling of ascension. Of climbing the ladder, so to speak. That's why these industries are so vampiric and satanic at heart. The human sacrifice and cost it demands just for you to live a fleeting dream that's not even real. I mean, that's pretty dang satanic, guys. And understand the word Satan, it just means adversarial. It's an opposition to things that are supposed to help you. Well, it doesn't have to exclusively be, but that's the thing. The things that you think you want in life are actually, it's poison. So, I don't know. Anyway, I was just thinking, so if you really think about it, if you have a student loan, I want you to know that the banks play the same game. When they are loaning you an education for the promise of a better future and a better life that you still haven't seemed to have gotten yet, it's because it wasn't really a loan. They bought you. They bought you like you were a slave so that you could keep their unending, ravenous appetites going. Because they themselves are so paralyzed by fear of accountability that they can't live in a world that asks them to just be good. So, yeah. You don't own your own soul. As long as we keep ascribing to these and assigning value to this stuff, you yourself have signed off on the idea that you don't belong to you. You are owned by banks.